Hold on to your friends, hold on to your guns, hold on to your home. March up to the gate and build it open.
Hi, I'm Ron Suchiu, and today I'm going to take you on an adventure that I went on with Eric Burdon of the Animals, the very famous band. And Eric made a song very, very popular back in the 60s called The House of the Rising Sun. You know, I know if you play guitar, you probably started off by learning that song, and it seems like almost everybody in the world knows it. But the house was discovered back down in New Orleans. The real House of the Rising Sun was discovered a few years back, and Eric had told me about that. So he set it up for me to go down there and meet with the owner. I'm just going to call her Darlene for the reason of the video. And she actually took us through the House of the Rising Sun, and we did this partnership project with Eric. And the House of the Rising Sun you see behind me has a lot of detail, and you'll see Eric in there. I always use, I do a lot of times I use reflections, and reflections, the reflection in this one is of Eric way back when the Animals, he was in the Animals, and then this one was the day, kind of the age that he was when I was doing the project with him. And I've actually hit a lot of symbolism in my painting, and I do that quite often. You'll find a lot of my pieces also, those reflections are there. Like you'll see one subject in as on the top, or the main object, and then you'll see below that it's actually changed on you. Anyway, in the House of the Rising Sun, there's two parts of it happening here. This is the back of the House of the Rising Sun. This is actually in the courtyard, and this is the front of it, and it is a surreal drawing or painting. It's not meant to be exactly the way you would find it down in New Orleans, because in New Orleans there would be another building here that kind of butts almost right up to the building. So anyway, the House of the Rising Sun was actual brothel in New Orleans way back when. They employed beautiful Polynesians for obviously for the sex trade at the time, which was kind of illegal and legal at the same time. There was a way around that. I'll get into a story about that in a bit. But anyway, if you look at the House of the Rising Sun here, there's a few things that are happening here. I always put the dragon, my dragon Alexandretta, is my actual life logo. I'm a dragon not only in Chinese culture, but I'm also a dragon in the Transylvania culture, which I am half Transylvanian. So you'll see Alexandretta is actually the light fixture on the building that's holding the red light, signifying that it is a brothel. And if you walk down St. Louis in New Orleans, you've actually probably walked right by this. And if you ever watched the movie with Ashley Judd, or I think it's, yeah, Ashley Judd, you'll find that you're walking right past the House of Rising Sun a couple times in the movie, and most people, I don't even know if the people that made the film would have known that. But in the movie, this building on St. Louis is used as the hotel that Ashley's husband supposedly tried to have her knocked off, and he's the bad guy of the film, and he owns the hotel. So anyway, the significance of the painting is a lot of the clues in here are voodoo, and if you look at the sky is actually upside down, and I found the clouds being upside down. I kind of get I don't know if I get a chuckle about it, but I guess I think I'm smug sometimes when I put things in my paintings. See if you catch it or whatever. And it was funny because about 2 or 3 years after I did the painting, I walked outside one day and I literally saw these clouds identical, and they were upside down. In the bottom, you'll see Eric Burdon back in the 60s. That I've been asked about this hand grenade that he's got hanging on his like a chain on his chest as a necklace or whatever. And I asked Eric for the best picture he had, or his favorite picture that he had from back in the 60s, so that I could use it in the picture, knowing that I wanted to do a reflection of him today and showing him in the past at the same time. And the hand grenade was there because Eric he likes the symbolism, and that's maybe one of the reasons why he did the partnership with me. But he said at the time he knew that the animals were just on the edge of exploding and breaking up, and that's why the symbolism of the hand grenade on his chest. Eric is quite the rebel, and when we had a chance to visit with him down in Palm Beach where he actually lived out in an oasis. It was like an old work camp, which was really unique, and we had a chance to visit with him there, and he had taken this picture on this oasis, and he had a blanket wrapped around him that night. I guess it was really cool, and he gave me that picture also. And what I've done is all through the blanket, you'll actually see symbols of man, all different types of symbols of man. And I've actually hidden in the ground on this one, you'll see one of the symbols of resurrection. So when you're baptized in voodoo, you're baptized actually in fire and water, and I show a voodoo baptism here with Eric. And if you're walking down St. Louis and you want to see the House of Rising Sun, you're actually going to see this part of it. And what is really unique about New Orleans, most buildings, the second floor is actually the main floor. Because of the flooding that happens in New Orleans, quite often they would build the basement being above ground. So this is actually the main floor. This is the third floor here, which is where all of the bedrooms of the brothel would be. And in that door, if you walked in there, was the room called the Rising Sun. And that is a huge room that was split into two. And there's a sequence of protocol that you would go through as a male going in to hire a prostitute in the House of the Rising Sun. A really unique piece went down this hallway, and it's an alleyway actually. These buildings are not the way you would see them in New Orleans again, and that hallway or tunnel would be in between the two buildings to allow you to get to the backyard. And I felt it was really cool. On the side, the right-hand side, when you walked in there, they had a huge mural that was put on there, and it was put on there in the 1800s, of this huge sprawling tree. And in the tree, there was the 7 gods of voodoo were actually projected in those. In New Orleans, you find that most of the stuff that looks voodoo, that's painted or that was painted way back when or displayed way back when, would look like Christian characters or Christian symbols. And that's because New Orleans, even to this day, about 60% of the people actually practice 2 religions at one time. They blend voodoo and Christianity together. And that being said, we found, and Darlene said that she had something really unique in the backyard. This little brick piece, like a little monolith, was hidden way back behind the garden. And if you look closely, there's a crucifix on there, and there's 6 bricks that are actually protruding that look like little shelves. And those shelves were, and actually there was a flat spot on top. And Shango, being the most powerful god, would have been placed on top, and then the 6 voodoo gods would always be there. So you had 7 in total. So you would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 voodoo gods put onto the Christian altar. And the reason for that is when the earliest slaves, and hopefully you don't mind me using the term slaves, but that's what they were, the slaves would be in the back, and to kind of fool their owners into thinking that they were practicing Christianity, which at the time they did not. They were actually at the altar, the voodoo altar, and everything about the voodoo altar looked Christian. So this became a real piece of treasure for me, because there's no other voodoo Christian altar of that sort remaining in the world today. They've all been torn down, and Darlene was very, very fussy with making sure that that was always maintained, that voodoo altar. Up in here, this would be the kitchen of the House of Rising Sun. In that day, you had a kitchen that was outside of the main building. It is a commercial building. It wasn't meant to be a home. And then up top would be the slave quarters. That's where they actually had the slaves. And if they had a slave that was, they felt there was a risk of them running, then on the back wall, which is really kind of a sad point was there was these large black wrought iron rings that were actually bolted right into the wall, and if you were being punished, you were actually chained to those rings, and you could have been chained there for days without food if they wanted to really reprimand you. That's the way they did it. So it was going back to the painting itself. It doesn't look like this. I'll warn you, I'm a surrealist. That's my idea, and in a surreal painting like this, I'm actually using the feeling and the sense of what I got out of the being in the building, feeling what all of the spiritual sense was that was coming out of the building, the smells and everything. And it actually leads me to something else. That combination with not only the building, with Eric Burdon, and Eric Burdon took us down to his Palm Springs oasis and showed us a little creek that was meandering through it, and that's why I use the combination in here. So you get the front of the House of Rising Sun, the back of the House of Rising Sun, and the slave quarters and everything else. And then what I challenge anybody to do is to look at all of the symbols in these pieces. There's another piece I did which was called Bella 3, and that was Oh Very Young, another song that I love very much by Cat Stevens. And you'll catch symbolism of humanity. And this one here, I call it the Code of Colors for Eric. Anyway, Eric has signed them all. He's got the most unique signature. He actually always signs with a peace symbol at the back end of it. So I mean, we got the hippie of hippies here, guys. And one thing about the voodoo altar, a real fast story I'll tell you about this one, and is when Eric said, when you go to the voodoo altar, the one thing you had to do is to actually mark, or actually two things you had to do: mark that you've been there and offer a gift to the altar, which I was dumb enough to not remember that. And what Eric did was he had a bit of a doobie on the go, so he left it sitting on top of the altar, and then he just took a piece of the foliage out of the garden and rubbed it on there with his fingers onto the brick. So he actually left his mark that he was there, and he actually left a gift. And the gift being for Shango. Shango is an important part. That's the last part I'm going to show you in here. And that is, Darlene introduced me to the god Shango, Shango being the most powerful of all of the gods of voodoo, the god of the power of lightning and thunder. And Shango is a woman or a man. It's a two-edged sword. And I have a whole story coming up called The Voodoo Curse on video. I come from a gypsy family, but I don't really believe a lot of times the spiritualism, although I've had it happen to me 1,000 times. I have trouble to really bite that hook. But what happened with me in an introduction to Shango, I was not supposed to take pictures with Shango. I did, and it turned into a real horrible story for us. And with a happy ending, of course. I'm still here today, so the curse didn't get me the way it was supposed to, I guess. Anyway, so stay tuned for the next videos. There's going to be quite a few detailed videos and stories on the House of Rising Sun. As I go through my paintings, I seem to be the Forrest Gump of the industry, so I seem to run into situations. This one has led me to Nelson Mandela. It's taken me to New Orleans. It's taken me to California, and all of the stories that are wrapped around it are going to be showing up in videos. So just stay tuned. We'll see you next time. I'm Ron Suchiu.
Easy, Skippy.